They say that gear doesn't really matter, but really, as a toy photographer, the right gear makes my life a whole lot easier. And one of the things that I use a lot are platypods. So in this episode, I want to talk about some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to get the most out of my toy photography with platypods, and I want to share them with you. So let's get going. Hey folks, Dave here. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you've probably seen some various equipment lurking in the back of all my behind the scenes shots that look like these, which are platypods. And what platypods are basically a low-rise tripod replacement that is useful for keeping cameras secure when you're trying to do shoots, and without having to carry around bulky tripods and dealing with the tripod police and all that sort of thing. So it's a very low effort solution for having your camera secure in locations where perhaps it may not actually be all that secure otherwise. And platypods have been used by photographers for a wide variety of reasons, but because I'm a toy photographer, I want to concentrate on how I use the platypods and the accessories, what I call the platyverse, and how I use these in my own photography efforts to get the most out of it. So I want to share these tips and tricks with you, so let's break it down. All right, to start off with, this is the standard platypod setup that is kind of marketed and its main use. And what it is a platypod. This is the Platypod eXtreme, attached to a ball head of any kind. Any ball head will do. And you throw your camera on that, and it has a low base solution for keeping your camera secure. And this actually works really well out in the field. I put my camera in places that would otherwise I'd not be comfortable with, in puddles, in snow, in sand. So the nice thing about this system is that it keeps the camera really down low, which is beneficial for toy photography. However, there is a problem. If you take a standard 6-inch action figure and stick in front of the camera, you notice even with this low profile, it's still much taller than the action figure itself. But this brings us to tip number one, which is you don't actually need the ball head. On this camera is a thing called a Platy disc. This is a silver one. On the camera is a black one. This is a silver one. And it contains on the front a 1/4-20 thread, and on the back a 3/16 thread. And this allows you to attach, in the normal case, the camera to an Arca Swiss plate, but it can also be used as kind of a tripod substitute itself. So let me show you. So I've replaced the ball head with just by attaching the disc directly to the platypod. And as you can see, the camera is actually at a much better angle towards the figure. As a bonus tip, you can use these legs to angle the camera by lowering the back legs. And keeping the front legs up. So this angles the camera towards the figure, so you get that looking up shot, which makes the toys look epic and large in frame. So one of the big things I use Platy-gear for is holding up lights. I find it's a very handy way of holding up lights securely in just the right locations for lighting up scale dioramas. And the way I usually do that is by grabbing a Platypod Elite, which is a smaller platypod that's designed for smaller cameras. It's also slightly cheaper. And on these platypods, there's several holes that have 1/4-20 threads in them. So they're used for attaching any camera attachment that has a 1/4-20 bolt. The goosenecks themselves have on one end a 1/4-20 male end, and on the other a 1/4-20 female end. And it has this little adapter here. So what I do is I take the adapter, stick it on the end. So now I have a gooseneck that has 2 bolts sticking out. Stick the first one into the hole. I typically use the middle hole just for balance. And then grab something like a loom cube, which has a 1/4-20 attachment to it. Thread it on. So now I have a nice light stand that I can use for lighting up my figures. So why stop at one light when you can use 2 goosenecks and have 2 lights? So one of the things you're going to run into when you start adding lights and goosenecks to platypods is that the center of gravity tends to get off-centered and things start to fall over. Sorry, Samurai. So the way around that is to add weights to the platypod just to weigh it down. Oftentimes I'll just use a brick, but a tip that came from the Platypod community is to use these 1, 2, 3 blocks, which are machinist blocks. I don't know what they're used for precisely, but they're used by machinists. They're like, I bought these on Amazon too for like 12 bucks. And they have these holes in them. And if you just stick them on the platypod, it weighs down the platypod so it no longer falls over. Take another gooseneck, just attach it on. And now you have a light that is even taller, so you can have it go in much different, farther away. Put the 1, 2, 3 block as a counterweight. And now you can put your light in way more unique areas. Boom, just like that. So you can get your light in a crazy amount of different orientations. And you can daisy chain these as much as you want. I've done as many as 3, but you can do as many as you want. So at some point in time, you're going to want to take off the light. And when you unscrew it, I find often what happens is that little adapter tends to stick to the light, not to the platypod, or it gets difficult to take off. So what I do is take a pair of pliers. These are my Leatherman Wave, which always sits on my belt. I highly recommend getting some sort of multi-tool. They're very useful, especially for this. So all you really need to do is just take the pliers, put it around the threads of the adapter, just give it a little quick quarter turn, it loosens it up, and you can pull it off all the way. Then another tip is these goosenecks have a little hole on the side here, and I usually store the adapter in that hole just so I don't lose it. Another thing you can use these goosenecks for is to hold up items. For example, in my Santa Claus shot that I did a few episodes ago, I used the gooseneck to hold up his arm, otherwise it would kind of flop down like this. So I just used the gooseneck underneath to prop it up. I've also used this gooseneck in a V shape to hold up a Spider-Man, so it can hang from a wire. I've also used it to hold back Doctor Strange's cape. So these goosenecks, they don't just have to be for things attached to it. You can just use the fact that they exist, and they can be bendable to put them anywhere where you need to have something kind of just propped up. So another thing you can use with these goosenecks is to hold up other things using these clamps. These clamps have 2 threads, the 3/16 thread and the 1/4 20 thread. So if we take the adapter again, stick it on the gooseneck, and screw in the clamp, now we have a set of jaws that we can use to grip things. And I've used this for a wide variety of things. I've used it to hold up toys just by holding it like this and putting the toy in the jaws. I have used it to hold up backgrounds. I've also used it to hold up things like reflectors. So if you just take the reflector, stick it in the jaws, cinch it down, and you now have a platform holding up your reflector, so you have your hands free to actually do the work that you need. All right, so these next set of tips are all about making your life easier in the field. One of the problems you have when you're doing toy photography is you have your action figure set up, you grab your camera, and maybe you don't have a tripod set up, so you're trying to aim it, and then maybe you have to hold a light, and the figure, you have to maintain that, so you kind of quickly run out of hands. So I found a way around that to hold lights off camera using this Platypod system. And the way it works is this. Grab a hot shoe adapter. These are available on Amazon for like $5 each, and all they are is a 1/4 screw and a little plate at the bottom that is used to attach to the hot shoe of your camera. Because it's a 1/4, we can use all of the Platypod attachments. So typically what I do is take a gooseneck and use the side little hole that I normally use to store the attachment, take that off and screw in the hot shoe adapter. And then I can take a light like this, screw it on the other end like this. Then all I have to do is attach the adapter to my hot shoe, cinch it down, and now I have on my camera a off-camera light shining on the action figure, so I no longer need to use my hands to hold the lights or to manipulate the lights. I can just simply concentrate on lining up the shot with my handheld camera. Of course, why use one light when you can have two? I added a second gooseneck to the first gooseneck, and now I have a rig with two lights for even more light possibilities. Of course, you don't even have to limit yourself to lights. Add a clamp on it, and now you can add a reflector. So one of the things I like about the Platyverse is that everything kind of works together to allow you to come up with solutions to problems you didn't even necessarily knew you had, which is how I came across this. And you might ask yourself, well, Dave, what is this? And what this is a solution to a problem that is unique to toy photographers, I believe, and that is when you're shooting toys, you often have to get down really low. And sometimes you either don't want to because you're old or you're lazy or the ground is dirty or wet. So you can come up with solutions like this. So what is this? This is a Platypod Max with 2 goosenecks and 2 Platypod clamps. And on the bottom is a Platypod disc, which allows me to attach this to a tripod, which allowed me to take this shot of Spider-Man facing the sun without having to actually get down on the ground and get myself dirty. So that's it for my tips and tricks, and I hope you found it valuable, but I wanted to leave you with one last thought. When it comes to photography like toy photography, where there isn't an established industry that has a bunch of ready-made solutions that you can purchase off the shelf that are ready to go, you often have to come up with things on the fly in order to have all the lights and the camera gear in the right spots to get the shots that you want to take. And ultimately, getting those shots is the end goal. Having a set of gear that is flexible, that allows you to create these solutions on the fly so you can get those shots is really kind of invaluable. And it helps keep you in that creative flow that keeps you creating instead of trying to figure out the gear. So thank you for following along. I hope you enjoyed yourself here. If you want to see more of what I do, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.